The kitchen smelled of tomatoes, thyme, and the smoky undertones of roasted peppers, a scent that had woven itself into the fabric of my life for decades. Christmas morning in Lagos was always a symphony of aromas, laughter, and the clatter of pots. My hands, wrinkled but steady, stirred the pot of jollof rice, the heart of our family's holiday tradition. Each grain was a memory, each spice a story. This was no ordinary dish, it was my mother's recipe, passed down through generations, a legacy of love and survival that I, Amara, had carried proudly into my 70th year. The house was alive with the chaos of family. My grandchildren darted through the living room, their squeals blending with the carols playing softly on the radio. My son-in-law, Tund, was setting the table, his deep voice humming along to "O Holy Night." But my daughter, Kemi, was different this year. At 38, she carried a restlessness I hadn't seen before. Her eyes distant, her smiles forced. She moved through the house like a guest, not the daughter who once begged to lick the wooden spoon after I'd mixed the stew. "Ma, why do you still make this the old way?" Kemi's voice cut through the steam rising from the pot. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, her manicured nails tapping impatiently. "There's a faster recipe online. You don't need to spend hours on this." I paused, the wooden spoon hovering over the bubbling rice. Her words stung, not because they were new, but because they echoed a growing divide. Kemi had always been my firebrand, the one who questioned everything, who left Lagos for university in America and came back with ideas that sometimes felt foreign. I smiled, brushing off the jab. "This isn't just rice, Kemi. It's us. It's who we are." She rolled her eyes, a gesture that sliced deeper than her words. "It's just food, Ma. You act like it's sacred." I turned back to the pot, my heart heavy. The jollof was more than food, it was the laughter of my mother as she taught me to measure spices by hand. The late-night stories of my grandmother's survival during hard times. The pride of serving it at every family gathering. It was the thread that tied us to each other, to our roots. But Kemi saw it as a relic, a burden she no longer wanted to carry. As the morning wore on, the tension grew. The family gathered around the dining table, the air thick with anticipation. The jollof sat in the center, its vibrant red hue a beacon of tradition. My grandchildren clapped, their eyes wide with excitement. Tund praised the aroma, his compliments warm and genuine. But Kemi barely touched her plate. She pushed the rice around with her fork, her face tight with something I couldn't name: anger, maybe, or shame. Then it happened. In a single, careless moment, Kemi stood, her chair scraping against the floor. She grabbed her plate and, without a word, dumped the jollof into the trash. The room fell silent, the clatter of cutlery replaced by a stunned hush. My grandchildren froze, their eyes darting between us. Tund's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. I felt the air leave my lungs, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the table. "Kemi," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Why?" She didn't look at me. "I'm tired of this, Ma. Tired of you forcing this tradition on us. It's not my life anymore." Her words were sharp, each one a blade cutting through years of love and memory. I stood, my legs unsteady, and walked to the kitchen. The pot of jollof was still warm, its scent now a painful reminder. I covered it, my hands moving on instinct, and carried it out of the house. The family watched, confused, as I stepped into the humid Lagos air. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. The jollof, and the legacy it carried, deserved better than to be discarded. I walked to the community center down the street, where the less fortunate gathered for holiday meals. The faces there worn, hopeful, grateful greeted me with warmth. I served the jollof, each scoop a release of my pain. The smiles of strangers filled a void Kemi had left, but they couldn't erase it. As I handed out the last portion, a young girl, no older than 10, hugged me tightly. "This is the best rice I've ever tasted," she said, her eyes bright with joy. I returned home late, the empty pot in my hands. Kemi was waiting, her face softer now, but I wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. The jollof was gone, and with it, a piece of our family. I wondered if Kemi understood what she'd thrown away, not just rice, but a connection to her past, to me. The days after Christmas were heavy with silence. The house, once alive with holiday cheer, felt hollow. Kemi avoided me, her footsteps quick and light as she moved through the rooms. Tund tried to bridge the gap, offering gentle words about patience and understanding. But I couldn't shake the image of the jollof hitting the trash. It wasn't just the rice, it was the dismissal of everything I'd tried to pass on. I sat in my room, the old wooden chair creaking under my weight, and opened the family album. The photos told a story Kemi seemed to have forgotten. There was my mother, stirring a pot over an open fire, her smile wide despite the lean years of her youth. There was me, a young girl, standing proudly beside her, my hands dusted with curry powder. And there was Kemi, barely 5, her tiny fingers wrapped around a spoon as she tasted the jollof for the first time, her eyes sparkling with delight. Where had that girl gone? I decided to confront her, not with anger, but with the truth. I found her in the living room, scrolling through her phone, her face illuminated by the cold glow of the screen. "Kemi," I said, my voice steady but soft. "We need to talk." She looked up, her expression guarded. "Ma, I don't want to fight." "This isn't about fighting," I said, sitting across from her. "It's about understanding. That jollof you threw away, it's not just food. It's your grandmother's hands, your great-grandmother's stories. It's the love that kept us together when we had nothing else." Kemi's eyes flickered, but she didn't respond. I pressed on, my voice trembling with the weight of memory. "When I was your age, we didn't have much. The jollof was our celebration, our way of saying we were still here, still strong. I taught you to make it because I wanted you to carry that strength, too." She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Ma, I'm not you. I don't need rice to feel connected to my family. I've built my own life, me career, my friends. I don't want to be tied to some old recipe." Her words were a punch to the chest, but I saw something in her eyes, uncertainty, maybe even regret. I leaned forward, my hands clasped tightly. "Kemi, you can build your own life and still honor where you came from. Throwing away the jollof was like throwing away a piece of yourself." She looked away, her fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. For a moment, I thought she might cry, but she stood abruptly, muttering something about needing space, and left the room. I sat there, alone, the album still open on my lap. The weight of her rejection settled deeper, but so did my resolve. I wouldn't let this legacy die. Not like this. The next morning, I woke early and went to the market. The stalls were vibrant with colored tomatoes, green peppers, the golden sheen of palm oil. I bought everything I needed, my hands moving with purpose. If Kemi wouldn't carry the tradition, I would find someone who would. I thought of the children at the community center, their eager faces as they ate the jollof. Maybe the legacy didn't have to stay within the family, it could live on in those who needed it most. When I returned, Kemi was in the kitchen, staring at the empty pot I'd left on the counter. She didn't say anything, but her presence felt like a question. I set the bags down and began unpacking, the silence between us thick but not hostile. "I'm making jollof again," I said, not looking at her. For the center. They appreciated it more than you know. She nodded. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Can I help? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I paused, surprised. It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. I handed her a knife and a pepper. Start chopping, I said, my tone firm but not unkind. We worked side by side, the rhythm of our movements echoing the past, though the distance between us remained. The kitchen was alive again, but it wasn't the same. Kemi's hands moved clumsily, her knife slipping as she chopped the peppers. She was trying, but her heart wasn't in it. I watched her, torn between hope and frustration. This was the first time in years she'd stood beside me at the stove. Yet her silence spoke louder than her presence. I wanted to reach out, to pull her back to the girl who once loved this ritual. But I didn't know how. Like this, I said, guiding her hand to slice the peppers evenly. She nodded, her jaw tight, and I saw a flicker of the old Kemi, one who wanted to learn, to please me. But it was fleeting, replaced by the guarded woman she'd become. I turned back to the pot, stirring the rice as it soaked up the rich red stew. The scent filled the room, a bridge to the past. But Kemi seemed immune to its pull. As we worked, I told her stories ones she'd heard as a child, but perhaps forgotten. Your grandmother used to make jollof for the whole village during festivals, I said, my voice soft with memory. She'd cook over an open fire, and people would come from miles away just for a taste. It wasn't just the food, it was the way she made everyone feel like family. Kemi didn't respond, but her hands slowed, her eyes fixed on the cutting board. I kept going, hoping something would break through. When she taught me, she said the jollof was like life, you have to balance the flavors, the sweet and the bitter, to make it whole. That's what I wanted for you, Kemi, to know how to balance. She set the knife down, her shoulders tense. Ma, I get it. You love this tradition, but I don't feel the same way. I don't know how to be the daughter you want. Her words hit like a wave, raw and honest. I stopped stirring, the spoon heavy in my hand. I don't want you to be anyone but yourself, I said, my voice cracking. But you can't erase where you come from. That jollof you threw away, it wasn't just rice. It was me, Kemi. It was us. She looked at me then, her eyes wet with unshed tears. For the first time, I saw not defiance, but pain. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. I feel like I'm drowning in expectations. Yours, mine, everyone's. I wanted to hold her, to tell her it was okay, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I handed her the spoon. Stir, I said gently. Just for a minute. Feel it. She hesitated, then took the spoon, her movements tentative. The rice hissed softly, the steam curling around her face. For a moment, we were just a mother and daughter, bound by the rhythm of the kitchen. But the moment passed, and she stepped back, handing me the spoon. I need to think, she said, and left the room. I finished the jollof alone, my heart aching but hopeful. That evening, I took the pot to the community center again. The children greeted me with hugs, their laughter a balm to my wounds. I served the rice, watching as they savored each bite, their joy a reminder that love could be shared beyond blood. But as I watched them, I couldn't help but wish Kemi were there, seeing what I saw, feeling what I felt. When I returned home, Kemi was waiting. She didn't speak, but she sat at the table, a notebook in front of her. I wrote something, she said, pushing it toward me. It was a list ingredients. Steps. The recipe for jollof rice, written in her careful handwriting. At the bottom, she'd added a note, for Ma, so I don't forget. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. But it was a step. I smiled, my eyes stinging, and placed the notebook in the family album. The legacy wasn't lost, it was just waiting. The notebook became a quiet bridge between us. Kemi didn't mention it again, but I caught her glancing at the album, her fingers brushing its worn cover. The days turned into weeks, and the sting of Christmas faded, replaced by a cautious hope. I didn't push her. I'd learned long ago that Kemi needed space to find her way. But I kept cooking, kept serving the jollof at the community center, each pot a testament to resilience. One afternoon, as I prepared to leave for the center, Kemi appeared in the kitchen, her coat slung over her arm. "I'm coming with you," she said, her tone firm but not defiant. I nodded, hiding my surprise, and handed her a basket of ingredients. We walked together, the humid Lagos air thick with the promise of rain. She was quiet, but her presence felt like a gift. At the center, the children swarmed us, their chatter filling the air. Kemi watched, her expression unreadable, as I served the jollof. A boy, maybe 7, tugged at her sleeve, asking if she'd made the rice too. She hesitated, then smiled a real smile, not the forced one I'd seen too often. "I helped a little," she said, glancing at me. We worked side by side, serving plates, laughing with the children. For the first time in years, I saw Kemi unguarded, her walls crumbling as she listened to their stories. One girl, Amaka, told us about her mother, who'd passed away the previous year. "Your rice tastes like hers," she said, her voice small but earnest. Kemi's eyes softened, and she knelt beside the girl, listening intently. On the walk home, Kemi was quiet again, but it was a different kind of silence, thoughtful, not distant. "They love you there," she said finally. "It's not just the food, is it?" I shook my head. "It's never just the food. It's the love you put into it, the stories you share. That's what makes it matter." She nodded, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. "I didn't get that before," she admitted. "I thought it was old-fashioned. But seeing those kids today, I felt something, like I was part of it." My heart swelled, but I didn't press her. Instead, I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. She didn't pull away. The next day, Kemi surprised me again. She was in the kitchen when I woke, the counter littered with ingredients. "I'm trying it," she said, her voice a mix of determination and nerves. "The jollof. Your way." I stood back, watching as she measured the spices, her hands less sure than mine, but careful. She asked questions: how much salt, how long to simmer, and I answered, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside. The kitchen filled with the familiar scent, and for a moment, it was like stepping back in time, to when she was a child, eager to learn. The jollof wasn't perfect, too much pepper, not enough thyme, but it was hers. We sat at the table, tasting it together, and I saw the pride in her eyes. "It's not bad," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "It's a start," I replied, my own smile mirroring hers. The gap between us was still there, but it was smaller now, bridged by a pot of rice and a willingness to try. That evening, Kemi asked to see the album again. We sat together, flipping through the pages, laughing at old photos, sharing stories. For the first time in years, she listened not just to me, but to the legacy she'd once rejected. I didn't know if she'd fully embrace it, but she was here, and that was enough. The weeks that followed were a slow dance of healing. Kemi didn't cook jollof every day, but she started joining me in the kitchen more often, her hands growing steadier with each attempt. She asked about my mother, my grandmother, the women whose hands had shaped the recipe. I told her everything: the hardships they faced, the joy they found in small moments. The way the jollof became a symbol of their strength. Kimmy listened, her questions thoughtful, her silence full of understanding. One evening, she brought Tund and the children to the community center. They watched, wide-eyed, as we served the jollof, the room buzzing with gratitude. My granddaughter, Ada, tugged at Kimmy's hand, asking if she could learn to make the rice too. Kimmy glanced at me, her eyes bright with something I hadn't seen in years' hope. We'll learn together, she said, ruffling Ada's hair. The moment felt like a turning point, but I knew better than to assume the wound was fully healed. Kimmy was still independent, stubborn, torn between her modern life and the roots she'd tried to outrun. But she was trying, and that was more than I'd dared to hope for. One night, as we cleaned the kitchen after another cooking session, Kimmy spoke up. "Ma, I'm sorry," she said, her voice low but steady. "For Christmas. For throwing away the jollof. I didn't understand what it meant to you." I stopped wiping the counter, my heart pounding. "And now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She met my gaze, her eyes clear. "Now I see it. It's not just Ricey, it's you. It's us." I was so focused on being my own person, I didn't realize I was pushing you away. I reached for her, pulling her into a hug. She stiffened at first, then relaxed, her arms wrapping around me. We stood there, mother and daughter, the weight of years lifting just a little. "You're still my Kimmy," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You always will be." The next day, Kimmy suggested we host a family gathering, not for Christmas, but for no reason at all, just to be together. She wanted to make the jollof, start to finish, with my guidance. I agreed, my heart full. We spent the day in the kitchen, laughing, arguing over spices, sharing stories. Tun joined us, teasing Kimmy about her heavy hand with the pepper, while the children darted around, stealing bits of rice when they thought we weren't looking. When the family arrived, the table was set with the jollof at its center, its rich aroma filling the house. Kimmy served it, her hand steady, her smile genuine. The room was loud with laughter, the clink of glasses, the warmth of togetherness. I watched her, my daughter, carrying the legacy forward in her own way. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. As the night wound down, Kimmy pulled me aside. "I want to keep doing this," she said. "The jollof, the center, all of it. I want Ada to know it, too." I nodded, my eyes stinging with tears. "She will," I said, "and so will you." The legacy wasn't just in the rice, it was in the love we shared, the mistakes we forgave, the bridges we built. Kimmy was finding her way back, and I was there to guide her, one pot at a time. Months passed, and the jollof became a regular part of our lives again. Kimmy took the lead at the community center, organizing cooking sessions for the children, teaching them the recipe with a patience I hadn't known she possessed. Ada was her shadow, her small hands eager to measure spices, her laughter echoing mine from decades ago. The center became a second home, a place where our family's legacy grew beyond the walls of our house. Kimmy changed, too. She was still the fierce, independent woman who'd built a life on her own terms. But there was a softness now, a willingness to listen. She started asking about other recipes, other stories, piecing together the history she'd once dismissed. One evening, she brought out the notebook again, now filled with pages of recipes, notes, and memories we'd shared. "This is for Ada," she said, her voice steady. "And for me." I watched her grow into the role I'd always hoped she'd embrace, not as a duty, but as a choice. The jollof was no longer a point of contention. It was a bond, a way to connect with each other and with those who needed it most. The children at the center called her Auntie Kimmy, their faces lighting up when she arrived with a pot of rice. She'd found her place, not in my shadow, but beside me. One day, as we prepared for another gathering, Kimmy surprised me with a gift, a small, hand-carved wooden spoon, engraved with our family name. "For the jollof," she said, her smile shy but warm. I thought it was time we had something new to pass down. I held the spoon, its weight grounding me. It was more than a tool, it was a promise, a sign that the legacy would live on, not just in the rice, but in the love we poured into it. I hugged her, my heart full, and we returned to the kitchen, ready to cook together. The final gathering of the year was the biggest yet. The community center was packed, the tables overflowing with food, the air thick with laughter and music. Kimmy and I served the jollof, our hands moving in sync, our smiles mirroring each other. Ada stood between us, proudly holding a plate, her eyes bright with excitement. Tund led the children in a song, his voice carrying over the crowd, while the older folks shared stories of their own traditions. As I looked around, I saw more than a meal, I saw a family. Not just mine, but the one we'd built with every pot of rice, every shared story. Kimmy caught my eye, her expression soft with understanding. "Thank you, Ma," she said quietly, "for not giving up on me." I squeezed her hand, my voice thick with emotion. "You're my daughter," I said. "I never could." The jollof was gone by the end of the night, every plate scraped clean. But the legacy remained, stronger than ever, carried forward by Kimmy, by Ada, by the community we'd nurtured. It wasn't just ricey, it was love, resilience, and the beauty of coming home.